This video contains heavy spoilers for Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is the newest game in a series by Respawn Entertainment, about a young Jedi called Cal Kestis, trying to survive being hunted down by the Empire and still dealing with the trauma after his master, Jara Tapal, got made into Swiss cheese by his former clone soldiers during Order 66. Now, I don't think Jedi Survivor is a particularly hard game. Does that mean I'm good at playing it? No. But I enjoy it nonetheless, and with that in mind I decided to do a challenge run, the No Stim Challenge. When you take damage in Jedi Survivor, and if you're bad at the game like me, you inevitably will, you would normally use a stim to heal Karl's wounds. Now the rules of this run are simple. I'm not allowed to heal using stims, but any other ways of healing are allowed, and those are meditation points, and the cheekier method of collecting your dropped essence after you die, which completely refills both your health and your force bar. Now that we've established the rules of the run, let's get started. Jedi Survivor has 5 difficulty options: Story Mode, Jedi Padawan, Jedi Knight, Jedi Master, and Jedi Grandmaster. The only difference between the difficulty types are the time window for parrying, the damage you receive, and the aggression of the enemies. I ultimately decided on playing the game on the Jedi Knight difficulty, as that's the option that the developers intended the game to be played on, at least to me. Feel free to call me a pussy in the comments. Adventure starts with Cal in handcuffs being escorted by the Coruscant security force. As we land, we are greeted by a racist stormtrooper.
Yeah, we should die like the rest of your kind, traitor.
And then we get to play Walking Simulator Star Wars Edition. Honestly, this part went on for way too long. After being manhandled by a droid that for some reason thinks that police brutality is the way to an early promotion, we are greeted by the Senator, who has a 2000 IQ idea to threaten a Jedi.
I'm sure the Emperor won't mind if I deliver you to him in pieces!
Of course, Karl breaks free of his cuffs with the help of BD-1, and now the run can truly begin. Now, Coruscant is a tutorial level, so it's not much to shout home about in terms of difficulty. I even had to check to make sure I was on Jedi Knight and didn't accidentally pick the wrong option, because honestly, this level felt way too easy. But trust me when I say, I wouldn't be having this problem later. After decimating a room of scout troopers, we are confronted yet again by the CSF officer, but it turns out that he was actually Bode, a member of Karl's crew. After a few platforming sections and waves of enemies, we come across our first mini-boss, K405. He is quickly dispatched, and then Bode decides to be like every parent and show Karl the hollow picture of his daughter that he had in his wallet. After picking up an ascension cable and doing some sick parkour with it, we meet up with the rest of Karl's crew, and they decide to commit highway robbery on the Senator's yacht. Once inside, Karl pulls an Uno reverse card on the Senator to get him to unlock his terminal so they can go through his internet history. After we arrest the Senator for his crimes against humanity, we are greeted by a fleet of Imperial ships and come face to face with the Ninth Sister. She opened fires on them and ends up putting most of Karl's crew into the Big Sleep. Karl decides that he's a solo act now, rushes to face the Ninth Sister, but ends up getting blown off the platform. Once we manage to escape the Aldi meat storage warehouse, we are confronted by a security droid. After I deliver some Jedi justice to it, we come across a stim crate. Stim crates give you more stims, if you couldn't guess that already. But for the sake of the run, I decided not to get any more of them. One reason being that if I keep the same amount of stims, then it's easier for you guys to keep track of the run, by keeping an eye on the number in the bottom left corner of the screen. Because the base amount of stims that you start off with is 2, so if I haven't used any, there'll be a number 2 in the bottom left corner. Another reason is this playthrough is focused on getting through the main story, so I'm not really going to be going out of my way to find any secrets. While making our way through Jason Voorhees' art gallery, we find an essence totem. These totems can grant you one of 4 things: an increase to your health, an increase to your force, perks, and skill points. Needless to say that these are the only collectibles I will be actively trying to get, because since we can't heal, a boost to our health will help us out immensely. We make our way to a landing platform to find out that Bode has been playing too much GTA and crashes the yacht into a group of stormtroopers. We latch ourselves onto the Ninth Sister's ship and cause it to crash. Of course the Ninth Sister survived the crash because Jedi, I guess. She uses a lightsaber as a helicopter. I don't even know how that works. As we line up for our first main boss battle. This boss fight was pretty easy, again, because it's a tutorial level. She doesn't do that much damage, and her attacks are pretty slow, so she's easily parried. The only thing that prolongs the fight really is that she goes into Neo mode and dodges all of your attacks. Honestly, if she didn't do that, then this fight would have ended quicker than it started. Although she did end up doing a fair amount of damage to me as the fight went on. Then midway through the fight, Karl decides to become Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I quickly end the fight. After besting her in combat, Karl decides to try and dox her.
Your name was Masana Tide.
This doesn't work though, as she already knows her own name, so Karl decides to cut her head off. After jumping off this ledge no more than 4 times trying to get this grapple point, I finally realised that there was a rope behind me the whole time, and I felt like an absolute idiot. After managing to recover from the utter embarrassment of this, we come across the only 2 survivors of Karl's crew, Bode and Bravo. They realise that their only way out is through an army of the Empire's finest, so we gear up for a fight and head straight in. This wasn't too difficult, as I had Bode and Bravo helping. I imagine if I was to do this fight on my own, then I probably would have had more trouble. After leaving in 3 separate ships, despite the fact that the Mantis could have transported all 3 of them, they tried to escape Coruscant. After showing off their MLG piloting skills, Bode leaves like a pussy, leaving Karl and Bravo to fend off the rest of the TIE fighters. Bravo gets game ended, and Karl makes a speedy getaway, and that is Coruscant finished. As far as tutorials go, it wasn't that bad, and had some fun sections, but at this stage I was just excited to really get going with the run. After taking a trip down memory lane and pining over his ex-girlfriend, Karl and BD figure out that the ship's gyro is broken, and decide to go to Koboh to ask Grease to fix it. On the way there, Karl and BD decide not to take Frederick Nietzsche's advice and stare straight into the Koboh abyss. We crash land on Koboh because Karl is a worse pilot than Al-Qaeda. While making our way to Grease's settlement, we have our first encounter with the Bedlam Raiders, and their reprogrammed battle droids. This fight is really easy considering the fact that the battle droids go down in one hit, and the raider just gets smacked around like a Stellar Drinker's wife. We come across a goofy battle droid admiring the view.
Is that a giant crater? Wow!
After solving a puzzle to get over some tar and petting a bogling, we finally make it to Grease's cantina. Upon entering though, Turgle gets thrown outside by some raiders. And we meet Ravis, who set another mini-boss on us, Zeke. Like the other raider, he was fairly easy and went down quite quickly. Once he's defeated, Ravis backs down like a coward.
Noble Jedi Knight, if you stay your hand, I shall withdraw in peace.
And we head inside to meet Grease. He's happy to see Karl and tells him to go rest up in the basement. Not a creepy suggestion at all, is it really? Karl wakes up and... I knew there was something creepy about this basement. After a pep talk from Grease, he opens a smuggler's tunnel and we head inside to find a new gyro for the Mantis. Once we find it though, we fall through the floor and end up inside a mysterious cave. After doing some Mario wall jumps, we come across a broken droid. Karl has a Vietnam flashback after touching it. And during this, we find out that the droid's name is Z. After she wakes up from her coma, we are tasked with trying to free her from her predicament. Once we do this, Karl fixes her leg, and we end up outside of Grease's cantina. After heading inside, we discover that Bode felt guilty from chickening out and came to Koboh in search of Karl. Z tells the group about a planet called Tanalorr.
Wait a minute. Did you just say Tanalorr?
And Karl decides to check out a nearby forest array to see what he can find out about it. On the way there, we encounter your mom,
Ha
and a melee version of the battle droids. After fighting some stormtroopers and getting over a platforming puzzle, we finally arrive at the forest array. Once we deal with the Mogu and a few other enemies, we find a depressed stormtrooper sitting on the edge of a cliff.
Why do I always get assigned to these backwater posts?
So I decided to help him get rid of his pain.
Stop!
After getting through a big wave of enemies, we come across a Relta. Something in its big soulless eyes caused Karl to have another flashback, and we tame the creature, allowing us to glide through the ravine. After a few more waves of enemies, at long last we finally make our way into the array. Karl opens a back attack and has yet another flashback. Only his PTSD seems to be getting worse as now he can walk around in them. He should probably get that checked out. Karl learns that during the days of the High Republic, a Jedi called Dagan Guerra wanted to build a new drug warehouse on Tanalorr, because since Tanalorr is so secluded it wouldn't get raided by the police. After saving the palest man in the galaxy, Dagan decides that his favourite colour isn't yellow anymore, it's red, and decides to attack Karl. And now we have main boss fight number 2. Dagan's attacks are quite fast, but like the Ninth Sister, he doesn't do that much damage. I did quite well against him and managed to get him down to about a quarter of his health before he killed me, marking my first death so far. On my second attempt I decided to play more aggressively, and after a long battle and him almost killing me again, I proved I was danker than him and finally put him down. Straight after this, however, Ravis shows up and Dagan escapes. I pick up some health essence and make my way back to the settlement. On the way there we tame a Neko and finally arrive at the Mantis. Z tells Karl to suck it up, Buttercup,
We must persevere, Karl.
and Karl tells the others what happened with Dagan. They decide that they want to take over the drug operation on Tanalorr, and Karl forces Grease to fly them to Jedha to go and find Seer.
Greasy money.
On the way there, Karl gets a holocall from a human wind chime telling him that there's a storm brewing on Jedha and they can't land at the base. So Karl will have to meet an escort to guide him there. After landing, we fight our way through some enemies and I almost get killed by a Sutterban. Its attacks were so fast I wasn't ready for it, but in the end I managed to put it down. But now we had to make it to the next meditation point without dying. We fall through a floor and have to jump over a hungry Skriton. After fighting through some bugs and flame troopers, I barely make it to the meditation point. We make our way across some ledges as Karl gets attacked by a jet trooper. After shish kebabbing him, we end up in a large room and have to fight off more of them. After this, Merrin shows up like a badass and helps us take down more of them. Karl tries to play it cool in front of her.
I'll follow your lead.
That's a first.
We make our way to Merrin's speeder and quickly take out all the enemies surrounding it. They realise that the speeder is broken beyond repair, and Karl has an idea to ride a Spammel to Seer's base. On the way to find the Spammel, Merrin goes John Wick on some stormtroopers. After Karl tries to impress Merrin with some platforming, we come across another mini-boss, the Skriton. It ended up taking a decent chunk of my health down, but with Merrin's help it went down quickly. Shortly after this we find the Spammel and hitch a ride. But the weather has other ideas, and Karl and Merrin end up in the middle of the storm. We came across some more enemies and an ATST mini-boss, but because I entered the fight with such low health, it one-shotted me. After respawning I managed to take down the ATST easily by directing its blaster fire and rockets back at it. Karl and Merrin enter a cave to find the Spammel, and we get some well needed rest and wait out the storm. We wake up the next day and make our way to Seer's base. When we arrive we are greeted by Eno Cordova. We head inside to find that Seer has been going to the same hairdresser as Agent 47. The group discovers that Dagan's drug lab was on Koboh Moon, so we head out to find it. Bode gives Karl a blaster,
The master always frowned upon using blasters.
and we safely arrive at our destination. While making our way into the facility, we enter a room with some battle droids that are definitely not going to wake up and start attacking us. They inevitably do, and I get overwhelmed, but manage to beat them by the skin of my teeth. Right after this, however, we come across a reprogrammed Magna Guard mini-boss. For future context, I am not good at fighting these enemies, and with that being the case, plus me having low health, it put me down unsurprisingly fast. The second time round, I decided to take out as many of the deactivated droids as I could, so I'd have a better chance of getting back to the Magna Guard with more health. Now you might think this was a clever idea, but it wasn't. I still got overwhelmed and lost a lot of health. But with this being the case, I decided to open a shortcut past this section, ran back to the meditation point, rested, and made my way back to the Magna Guard. He almost got me again, but I just managed to beat him. After a long platforming section, we find more goofy battle droids.
Those other droids here are such chumps. They do whatever we say. Suckers.
And almost get decimated by some enemies in a room. After this, we make our way over some electrified platforms, and I get hole punched by a commando droid. We make our way back, and even though it's not the Jedi way, I got some sweet revenge on it. We do some more platforming, and arrive at our destination. As we pick up a strange device, we are attacked by Dryer Thorn, a raider mini-boss with a lightsaber. This fight was easy. I still lost half my health however, but he went down faster than a hooker on a Friday night. And we are rewarded with the crossguard stance. Aside from testing it out, I never used this stance, as the attacks always felt too slow for me. I always tend to go for quicker attacks when I have the choice. We make our way back to the Mantis and head to Koboh to find out some more information on Tanalorr. On the way there, we get ambushed by a bounty hunter, Courage Lim, another mini-boss. And this guy was just as easy as the last one. The main reason for this is because he uses a lot of ranged blaster attacks, and they are really easy to deflect. Once we kick his ass, we are greeted by Cage, I don't know how you say it.
By the way, nice touch. Love a big entrance.
You might be thinking, why is she acting insane? And the answer is simple. She's Australian. After almost getting mashed into paste by a Garocco, and solving some puzzles, despite my monkey brain lacking the ability to do so. I'm not kidding, by the way. This simple puzzle, took me almost 5 minutes to complete, and I was running around like an idiot the entire time, not knowing what to do. Eventually, we make it to the Grand Courtyard, and are confronted by Targ Luesh, another maniac with a lightsaber. Much like the other raider, this mini-boss was a pushover. His attacks are parried easily, and he has low health. After turning him into another statistic, we pick up another strange device, and Karl has another flashback. But this time, he can see them in the real world. Mildly concerning, to say the least. After this, we head back to the Mantis, and on the way there we get ambushed by Mayan Core, a bounty hunter mini-boss. She tries to flashbang me, but it doesn't work, and I put her down in seconds. After finally making it back, we head to Jedha to report on our findings. After giving the devices to Cordova, he proves to be as useful as a paper hammer,
a strange device,
and says that he's going to try and fix them. And we learn that the Empire has sent an excavation team to Jedha, and they are close to finding the group. Sia sends Karl to find Brother Armias because he has the IP address for the hidden path, and the group can't risk it falling into the hands of the Empire. Merrin tags along and we head out into the desert. Aside from a few puzzles and groups of enemies, there's not really much to talk about while getting to the temple, so we'll just skip ahead. We enter a large room full of various stormtroopers. I managed to take out a fair few of them before failing to push a rocket back, which led me to being one shot away from being made into a Jedi pancake. After this, I decided to take a more tactical approach, which is a fancy way of saying I ran away like a coward to think a way out of the situation without dying and having to fight all the enemies again. I managed to get a jump attack on the droid and removed his rocket launcher from the equation. After disarming it completely, I managed to put it down after a few lightsaber throws and one final swing. The problem I had now is that I was extremely low on health and had to get to the next meditation point. I failed to jump over this gap and fell into a void, and now I had even less health. We eventually make it into a room with a pool and some enemies. I don't know how many enemies there were because I instantly jumped into the water in an effort to hastily get away. After solving a puzzle to get through a door, we come across Brother Armias. After shooting at us, he gives us the IP address and gets squished. Merrin shows up and gives us a medallion, and now we can dash through green shields. We get through a platforming section and end up back inside the temple. After a few more waves of stormtroopers, Karl and Merrin become trapped on a cliff's edge and she opens a portal for them to jump through. They destroy the Squid Game ship, and we return to Sia. The group learns from Cordova that the mysterious devices are actually compasses to navigate the abyss. Merrin decides to tag along as we head back to Koboh yet again to find a working one. As we exit the ship, we are told by Moosey and Turgle that Z has been
Droid-napped!
So we rush off to save her. On the way, we see a Mogu going for a nightly stroll. And when we arrive, Bode turns up and we head straight for the Raider's nest. I try to walk across the tar because I have one brain cell. After finally figuring out the right way to go, we come across a landing pad full of battle droids and raiders, and me and Bode swept the floor with them. After more enemies and Jedi jump sections, we come across a Magna Guard that destroyed me verbally,
I've acquired an easy target,
and literally. I fight my way back to it and pay him back for the disrespect. After this, we come across a super battle droid and 2 raiders, and despite entering the fight with full health, they threw me around like a ragdoll. And as it seems to go so far in the run, second time's a charm and I mashed them up. But now, once again, I was really low on health. Lucky for me, however, Bode decides to show up straight after this, and much like a kid getting his older brother to fight his battles, I let him kill the Magna Guard. But right after this, 2 droideckers gave me a new orifice. I put them in their place, and Bode decides to stay consistent and fucks off, leaving me alone to fight my way through the next area, which I wasn't happy about considering how badly I've done so far. I clear out more enemies, and then get shot at by some turrets while also fighting some enemies off. Seriously, this area makes me want to pull my teeth out with a pair of rusty pliers. Then we come across this big hunk of dumbass, that surprisingly didn't manage to kill me. Then to add to my frustration, Bode shows up at the last second just as I put him to the floor. Then he decides to try acting tough by opening a door with his jetpack, and now I'm really starting to hate him. We enter the Star Wars version of a council estate and managed to clear it out with little to no trouble. Once we got down to the lower levels, however, I was stomped on once again after getting ganked by some raiders. I managed to clear them out, and then me and Bode are ambushed by a large wave of droids, and you guessed it, I died again. On my next try, I decided to play it more tactically by taking out all the enemies on one side and then moving on to the next, and it worked like a treat, until this knobhead showed up and crushed my skull against the floor. On the third try, I abandoned my tactic and replaced it with one equivalent to a gorilla swinging a stick, running straight in and going ham on them all. This time round, the big guy glitched out and ended up trapped in a corner, and I got some free hits in before he recovered. And then Bode drop kicked him into oblivion. Shortly after this, Bode gets trapped behind a force field, and Karl and BD must have taken a wrong turn and ended up in a horror game. Whilst making our way through, we get jump scared by Ravis. Karl cuts his arm off, and he just sticks it back on like he's Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas. BD slams him into a wall, then we fall through a pipe, and learn how to pull down turrets. We use this new ability to get through the ship, and fry an unsuspecting raider.
exposed.
Then blast our way through more enemies with no problem. Whilst heading further into the base, Karl and BD overhear Dagan and Ravis having a lovers' quarrel.
All those years of incarceration dull your edge.
Sharp enough to see the Jedi might be your equal.
Say it again and I'll cut out your tongue.
It'll grow back.
And Ravis leaves to go back to Koboh Moon. After this, we find Z and attempt to rescue her, before we are rudely interrupted by Dagan. Clearly still annoyed from his argument with Ravis, he decides to take his anger out on us. And now we have to get through the third main boss, Dagan Mark II. He has some new moves this time round and increased his speed. I almost got him to half health before he pirouetted me to death. On my second attempt, I almost had him before I fell to the same move again. The third time round, I decided to be a tad more liberal in terms of aggression. And I had a plan. I was going to save my essence for when my health got low, so I could at least have a chance of surviving for longer. Dagan is clearly clairvoyant because he manoeuvred himself directly behind it and pushed me into it. But despite this, and him deciding to spam the red unblockable attacks, I got him with about a quarter of health left. He was clearly annoyed at this and decided to cheat. But once again, Bode comes in at the last second and saves Karl.
Hey, back to breath.
And Dagan rage quits the match.
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
We steal 2 escape pods and fly to the Moon Lab to confront Ravis. Whilst heading through the array, we come to a room full of enemies and a beam of energy that fires on a pattern. Now the problem here is that you have to defeat the enemies and avoid this death beam. I am unfortunately lacking in skill, so I was killed faster than a badger on a country road. I came back with an idea though. If I could push them into the discount Death Star laser, then I wouldn't have to rely on my non-existent skills. And it worked brilliantly. We do some hazardous climbing and make it to the lab. After defeating more enemies, we come across a fatty, and he was not messing around. I did surprisingly well until he did that damn slam and knocked me on my ass. I go back with the bloodlust of a deranged psycho and put him down. Karl gets an upgrade for his ascension cable, and we can now grapple onto weather balloons. We Batman our way to the top of the lab, And when we arrive, Ravis starts screaming like a madman.
I owe you nothing, Jedi!
And now we have to fight him. Unlike any of the bosses I've dealt with so far, he hits like a truck. So I went on the defensive, only taking swings at him when I thought I had a window. I depleted his health, but Ravis has a second phase and regains all of his health when he enters it.
Oh, come on.
And on top of this, uses new attacks. And he smashed me into a pulp almost instantly. On my next try, I decided to play aggressively in the first phase because I was a lot more confident in being able to counter his attacks. And I had saved my dropped essence for the second phase so I could pick it up to get my health back. If he can do it, why can't I, right? He got me down to the smallest amount of health possible, and that's when I realised something. If you stay away from him, he will use mainly ranged attacks with his blaster and rockets. So that's what I did. Deflecting each bolt back at him until he gave in. Was it scummy? Probably. Was it fun? Oh yes. After this, Karl tries to befriend Ravis, but he says no. So Karl cuts his head off. And we head to our next destination. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to play Where is Dagan Hiding? Is it A, a completely new planet we haven't seen yet? B, a planet we've seen in Star Wars before and are excited to go there? Or C, Koboh? If you guessed Koboh, then yep, you're right. How many times do we have to go to this shithole? After showing these stormtroopers that their shields can't protect them, we get attacked by a Mogu, and to my surprise, it actually managed to kill me. I went back and made it into mincemeat, and after listening to these two stormtroopers complaining about their life,
Yeah, we've been wasting away on this mountain so long.
I decided to help them get over it. I almost got destroyed by a wave of enemies, and then BD almost kills us by activating a crashed ship. We get the drop on some enemies. See what it did there? We enter a hangar and drop a TIE fighter on some goons. After this, however, I decided to play like a massive pussy and stay on top of the platform and deflect the rest of the enemy's attacks back at them. It's a good thing I did this though, because after defeating them, two of the big boy droids show up. And I really struggle against this enemy type. With me being on low health, I kept my distance and just went on the defensive. But this didn't work as they still blew my head off. On my next try I was annoyed, so I ran in there like a moron and just went apeshit. And surprisingly, this worked. We make our way up a lift and I'm met by a stormtrooper that seems a bit off. But I can't put my finger on why. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we come across the hardest, toughest boss battle I've ever dealt with. This boss makes Bed of Chaos seem like a walk in the park. Enter Rick the Door Technician.
The Jedi! Get ready to die!
We make our way up a cliff and come across the Wish.com version of Bespin. And after making our way over to it, we come across a situation that as a Star Wars fan I've always wondered the outcome to. Who would win? Stormtroopers or droids? Unfortunately, I never got to find out because I got launched off the city by a droid. After heading back, I stopped trying to watch these two mentally challenged armies fight and won the battle myself. After this, we come across Urgost, Fist of Ravis, a mini-boss. I barely had time to read his name before he slammed his hammer into my eye sockets. Then I went back and returned the favour. After this, we meet up with Bode and make our way into a big chamber. After getting killed not once, but twice by a big group of enemies, I finally managed to beat them. And we reach the top, to find Dagan Mark III. He blames Karl for the fall of the Jedi and attacks him. Now the first phase is easy, because it's a 2-on-1. Second phase was quite difficult, but I managed to clutch it with next to no health left. Third phase, Dagan decides to 1-up me on the first phase and does a 3-on-1, and he killed me. Now, I was on this boss for a very long time, and here's pretty much how it went. I finally managed to beat him with just over half my health left. It turns out that during the fight, Dagan gave Karl a heavy dose of acid, and most of the fight was just a trip. Karl says no you and gives Dagan some acid and makes him trip out instead, and then stabs him. Before he dies, however, Dagan breaks the compass, so we head back to Jedha to get called over to fix it. While he does this, the group relaxes by a campfire.
Hey! I have more tea.
and Seer tells Karl that she will go to Tanalorr with them. Cordova manages to fix the compass as the Empire launches an attack on the base. Right after this, Bode decides to pull a Micah Bell on us, and Karl chases him down on a speeder. We eventually catch up to him, and since the first twist wasn't that good, the developers wanted to throw in another. Bode is actually a Jedi. Here's the thing, this boss fight isn't technically an actual boss fight, because you have to lose this fight. Now, I didn't actually test this, so if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments, but I bet that if you just stand still and let Bode kill you, the outcome would be exactly the same. Bode shoots Karl and he falls off the cliff and passes out. And we take control of Seer and have to fight a mob of stormtroopers. Now you might have noticed that whilst playing as Seer, there's a number 4 in the bottom left instead of a number 2. That's because Seer automatically has 4 heals. Once we switch back to Karl, we will have 2 again, but the same method applies. As long as the number doesn't drop below 4, I haven't healed. The thing is about playing as Seer is that she does increase damage to enemies, so I never really had trouble dealing with them. Even Purge troopers go down insanely easily. After going Starkiller on a ship, Merrin shows up, and they head off to destroy the AT-ATs attacking the base. We destroy them with the power of Wii Bowling.
Nice cock!
Then head inside to secure the hangar to protect the Mantis. After defeating the worst raid party in the galaxy, and a giant metal chicken, Grease emerges from the ship like a ranged version of General Grievous, and Seer heads to the archive. After installing a VPN onto BD, who shows up?
It's the B to the A to the D-E-R.
That's right, we get to have a boss battle against Vader. Vader has 3 phases, and from what I can tell, he does the most damage per hit than any story boss in the game, and with that being the case, I tried to parry his attacks as much as possible, but he still gutted me like a fish. On my second try, I managed to get him to phase 2, but I had a scrap of health left, and he threw a ball of fiery books at me, killing me. Third try, I managed to get him to third phase without taking any damage. Once the fight starts again, however, he gets me to below half health in just 2 hits, and even though I try to keep on my toes, he kills me again. I get him to third phase again on my 4th try, and once again he caps my ass. 5th try. After this, I was not messing around, and I put him in his place with half health left. Seer does an anime finishing move, but ends up getting shanked by Vader. Vader leaves, and Karl shows up to find what's left of Seer. After returning to the ship, Karl remembers that he gave Bode a bounty tracker, and they use it to find him. After trying to jump to this platform 2 times because I have no spatial awareness, we come to a room full of mooks, and take them out like yesterday's trash. I open a door that I thought was the right way to go, and after using BD to hack some droids to help with the fight against the big boy, I end up getting team killed by them, and I have to run all the way back from the start of the level. I decided to unlock a shortcut just in case, and made them into scrap. After figuring out the right way to go, I get my ass handed to me. I get some payback, and like the worst cat burglar in history, Karl triggers the base alarm and causes a big group of enemies to converge on him. I clear them out. Immediately after this, however, 2 Purge troopers gank the hell out of me and kick my ass. Whilst heading back to enact some cold revenge on them, however, I get destroyed by this droid who thinks he's a Beyblade. The next try, I accidentally aggroed the 2 Purge troopers and thought I was done for, but somehow I managed to clutch a win. We make our way to a corridor with a moving shield that you're supposed to dodge through whilst also fending off enemies. I have 0 ability to multitask, so I got absolutely wrecked. After dying multiple times, I figured out that the droids really don't like going through this door. And you can bet your bottom dollar that I abused this. We drop in to see Denvik.
Hello there.
Karl reenacts the cover of Red Dead Redemption, and we learn that Denvik employed Bode to spy on them. Karl knocks him out and steals his uniform. We make our way to Bode's room and meet Carter, Bode's daughter. After a short conversation with her, Bode shows up, and like an angry D&D gamer, he flips a table on Karl and makes a run for it. Karl loses his temper and gains a dark side ability. I use this to absolutely crush wave after wave of enemies. Denvik shows up, and Karl decides to choke him, before being stopped by Merrin. We return to the Mantis, and the group come up with a plan to use the arrays to make a pathway through the abyss, so they can get to Tanalorr to get some payback on Bode, which means one final trip to Koboh. To get to the array controls, you have to go through a lot of purge troopers, and to my surprise, I only died once. After getting rid of them, we align the arrays and head to Tanalorr. Once there, we find Carter on her own singing a creepy song.
Star, hiding in the night.
And we head inside and prepare ourselves for the final boss. Something to note is that I have played through Jedi Survivor once before doing this run. And even when being able to heal, Bode still messed me up a ton. So not being able to do so in this fight was excruciatingly painful. Bode doesn't do as much damage as Vader for his regular attacks, but he is incredibly fast. After dying many times, Bode eventually felt sorry for me and decided not to attack me. In all seriousness, I don't really know how this glitch happened. I think it might have triggered from skipping the cutscene that plays before this phase. Bode still did attack me, but only in retaliation from me hitting him first. Due to this, I managed to defeat him. Karl tries to get Bode to surrender, but he says no, so Karl decides to shoot him. And after having a funeral for the people they lost along this journey, the credits roll, and I finally beat Jedi Survivor without using any stims. This was a long, difficult challenge, but despite this, I only died 55 times, which sounds like a lot, but I expected more, to be honest. I highly recommend trying to do this run, as it gave more of a survival game kind of feel, which may sound weird, but I think I prefer playing it this way. It was hard, but incredibly fun. If you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, why not drop a like and subscribe? I'll be doing more challenge runs in the future, and if there's a specific challenge you want to see me do, let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you next time.